Russian government used 10 million US dollars to create a platform to employ many of these MAGA-aligned influencers.
Is Russia and the United States amplifying Alberta separatist narratives? According to the Globe and Mail and CBC, they are. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we're going to be breaking down this situation where apparently, according to mainstream media, Russia is back at it again. We've got more numbers coming out for the state of Canada. We've got people robbing grocery stores. We got a bunch of stuff. Let's jump into this. We've got Global News posting this. U.S. and Russia adversaries meddling in Alberta separatist debate, study warns. And this is everywhere. We've got the Globe and Mail posting this. Foreign actors exploiting Alberta separatist debate to stoke discord, researchers say. CBC News posting this. Russia and U.S. amplifying Alberta separatist narratives to stoke division. Distrust report. Is this really Russia and the U.S. meddling in this? Or are they trying to create a narrative that makes it seem like there aren't Alberta separatists, there aren't really people wanting to separate? The timing of this is very suspicious considering there's just 301,000 petitions that were just counted to have a referendum, and then this story comes out. Early this year, Canadian researchers who track online influence campaigns and foreign propaganda happened upon something peculiar. Using artificial intelligence to catalog the activity of Russian websites and social media accounts known to be spreading disinformation about the invasion of Ukraine, the researchers noticed a topic suddenly garnering more attention than it had ever had from those groups. Alberta. So it goes on to say here, over 4 months, Alberta was the focus of 67 items produced and distributed by Pravda Network, nearly 5 times more than any other Canadian-related topics. There was a piece that was run showing that there's people in the Netherlands running Alberta separatist stuff. People are just trying to capitalize on this situation to make money off of it. But the way that they're framing this is that this is not really a real thing that's going on. There's not really Alberta separatist movement. It's just Russian meddling, U.S. meddling. People are meddling, which frankly seems quite dishonest.
A new report says both Russian and pro-Trump actors have been actively spreading misinformation about Alberta separatism. Researchers found a now defunct website and social media account promoting separatist views likely came from a Russian covert influence network. They also discovered pro-Kremlin news agencies responsible for posting over 60 articles related to Alberta since last December. U.S. officials and influencers have also joined in on the separatism discussion to social media and television appearances. And joining me now is one of the authors of that report. Marcus Kolga is the founder and director of DisinfoWatch, a platform dedicated to monitoring foreign disinformation. And so what you have put out here in your report is going to be alarming to some.
Well, sure. I guess the timing is quite good, given that the signatures for the referendum have just come in, and we've had all sorts of other news.
The timing is quite good. That's interesting language.
Thank you for giving time to talk about our report a little bit, where we indeed did find that Russian actors are currently very much targeting the Alberta secessionist movement and the issue. They have been doing so in the past as well. We in the report we mentioned that in 2019 we already saw efforts by a Russian government-controlled platform. In fact, one of the largest, Sputnik News, was targeting the Wexit movement. That's what they called themselves back then, was targeting that movement with misinformation and disinformation. And so Russia is clearly interested in exploiting this issue to try and divide Albertans, to try and polarize Canadians on this issue.
Are they really doing that? To what level are they doing that? Are they getting 10 views per month? Are they getting 400 million views per month? That's a key piece of information that we're missing here, Marcus, because they have no influence if they're only getting 10 views on their website or in their campaigns. But sure, if they're spending millions of dollars so every Canadian can see whatever message they're putting out, well, then that's a different story. And really, his entire report here hinges on that one piece of information.
And as you mentioned, we've also witnessed prominent U.S. MAGA far-right populist influencers, many of them operating on social media platforms like YouTube with videos, many of them with millions of followers, one of them with tens of millions of followers, taking direct aim at Alberta as well. And all of
tens of millions of followers, but where's the name? There's many with millions. Where's the names? Which accounts are these? You can't make claims like that and not back it up with verified sources and facts.
This is intended to manipulate the understanding that Albertans and Canadians have of this issue. And as I said earlier, to try and divide them and polarize them by exploiting it.
This looks like a way to tie the word Russia and United States to Alberta separatists. And I think we can fix Canada. I'm from Alberta. I live in BC. I support the people of Alberta for what they want to do. Obviously, I want the people of Alberta to stay unified with Canada and get our country back. But I mean, come on. What is this? You know, they throw out a word like extremist views while they're doing this report. Well, they know what they're doing here, what kind of narrative that paints. And while we're talking about Marcus Kolga here, we've got this from April 18th, 2024. It says here he was invited to provide testimony about Russian information and influence operations targeting Ukraine, Canada, and our allies in Canada's Senate, along with other leading Canadian experts. Below are his opening remarks as delivered in the Senate. Now, scrolling down, what do we see in here? We'll just read out this one line. Extremist far-right anti-government voices within the Freedom Convoy movement were platformed by Russian state media in 2022. Yeah. So you can decide for yourself if you think he's a credible source of information or not. So digging through the actual report itself, it says right here, so Benny Johnson, it says Johnson endorsed Alberta separatist movement, telling his more than 6 million YouTube followers, mentions up here, Benny Johnson and Tim Pool is who he's referring to, the tens of millions in America. These guys aren't extremists trying to sway the movement or whatever. It's a couple of guys who have their podcasts, who have opinions. In the case of Benny Johnson, supports the Alberta separatist movement. Tim Pool told his 2.72 million YouTube subscribers, Trump officials met with Canadian separatists. Looks like we're taking Canada, boys. Obviously, that's a joke. But of course, they write this out like this is some sort of official statements from these guys. So it goes on to show a bunch of AI slop. This crap's got to go. Get this off of YouTube. I'm glad YouTube is cracking down on this stuff. Concern about U.S. and Russian interference in Canadian politics. Percentage naming the country as one that tries to influence Canadian politics and elections through covert, deceptive, and sometimes threatening means. We've got Russia is this red color and America is the blue color. And this is going from July 2024 and America spikes up here and then starts dropping off, and Russia has been pretty flat around 52% down to 42%. What's interesting is there's no China on here, and we know China is influencing our elections. Xi Jinping and his government was in support of Mark Carney. They issued statements in support of him during our last election, and yet they don't mention that at all. If you're a swing voter, if you're a liberal, something to think about. Why wouldn't they bring this up when we know this is verified information? It was all over WeChat, which is a Chinese app that essentially it's kind of like Facebook Messenger plus like any of your banking apps and like all your apps. If you had Skip the Dishes and Uber and all that stuff, it just goes all into WeChat. You can do all of it from one app. It's a news app and everything. The Chinese government was supporting Mark Carney and blasting that out to millions of people during the election in hopes to sway the Chinese diaspora in Canada. So are you really surprised when you have a group of people who want to separate, and they're not the first ones. There's already Quebec separatists. Now we've got Alberta separatists. And I mean, when we see stuff like this from Juno News, Miller says next media bailout could be $6 billion. That's right, not just $1.6 billion for the CBC. We need 4 times that. Minister of Culture Mark Miller said expanding the labor journalism tax credit to television and radio is not a question of if, but how. No wonder public trust is being eroded.
I just want to maybe distinguish between what I think are two different things, or a little bit different. You tell me if I'm wrong. But the disinformation coming from Russia appears to be, I would call it covert, i.e.
Correct.
You don't know where it's coming from, you don't know the sources of it, and it's masking itself as something looking more legitimate than perhaps it is. Whereas what you're talking about in terms of, you called them MAGA influencers, they're doing this, I think, with their face fully visible. You know, they may not be speaking what is the truth. You know, they may be offering a lot of opinion, but is that really the same thing?
This is embarrassing to watch. This is what they call journalism. Please.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Russia is more covert in its operations, although many of the incidents that we uncovered were directly related to platforms that are connected with the Kremlin and aligned with the Kremlin. And on the U.S. side, you're right. It's overt. It's influencers that we all know who have millions of followers and who are trusted by probably millions of Canadians as well, who are
Yeah, and they have opinions, and they don't like what the Canadian government is doing, just like many Canadians don't like what the Canadian government is doing. You guys got to remember, Carney got 43%, Poilievre got 41%. That wasn't a slam dunk win by Carney, and his current majority government was done through floor crossers and dirty backroom deals, not through an election. So when we see stuff like this, Stephen McKinnon here doesn't want to answer the question of why they're shutting down another committee with no debate. What do you think happens to Canadians' trust of the system?
The Conservatives are upset that you're putting closure on that bill on C11. Why are you putting closure?
Well, you're going to see this more often. The Conservatives will use this obstructive tool of just continuing to talk out bills. Sometimes they talk about the bill, sometimes they don't. And obviously we have a lot of bills and a lot of work to do. So we will obviously always have time for debate.
Challenging troubling bills that have language in there that it's not beneficial to Canadian is not obstructing, that's doing their job. The Conservatives are doing their job. These guys are trying to shut down everything, take it all in camera, which means, well, in private, with no cameras, the irony of the language there. And he gets asked on this and says, oh, we always support debate.
In the House, but when we see the obstruction rearing its ugly head again, we'll have to take measures.
Like, I didn't see any obstruction on the bill.
Yeah, there were signs of that.
There were signs of it, for sure. Please. And if you're wondering, Bill C-11 is an act to amend the National Defense Act and other acts. This is a military justice system modernization act.
We see some of those influencers on the U.S. MAGA side who are involved or alleged to have been involved in a scheme called the Tenant Media Platform, by which the Russian government used $10 million to create a platform to employ many of these MAGA-aligned influencers to promote Kremlin-aligned narratives. And this was uncovered by the U.S. Department of Justice back in September of 2024.
They're trying to tie this to Alberta separatist movement. They're drumming up old stuff from years ago and just keep throwing out the word MAGA and Russia, MAGA and Russia.
Many of those voices that were in that Russian funded scheme are now voicing opinions on Alberta as well. So we're seeing a convergence of the two to a certain degree as well.
Oh yeah, to a certain degree, they're converging. Oh, please. This is not real journalism. They want to do some real journalism. Go to a grocery store. Look at this story. This will blow your mind. I'll let it play for itself.
Thefts are being driven by a mix of economic pressure and increasingly organized retail crime. Grocery stores are reporting coordinated repeat thefts tied to criminal networks. The Retail Council of Canada has called retail crime a national crisis, with losses now approaching $10 billion annually across the grocery sector and growing. The RCMP in Richmond, BC say supermarket theft has doubled so far this year.
Supermarket theft, $10 billion. $10 billion. That's how bad things are in Canada right now.
We have analysts, and when they see a spike like this, we have meetings every week.
In January, Ottawa police conducted Project Pantry at this downtown grocery store. Undercover officers charged a dozen people with 78 charges, with some thefts appearing to be coordinated.
Going to a car right away and in giving that product to whoever's in the car in exchange for something.
Some self-checkout counters inside grocery stores are also being exploited.
Walmart in the States is pulling them out of a lot of their stores as we speak.
Just last August in Windsor, Ontario, more than $220,000 worth of beef was stolen from this parked tractor trailer. The large-scale heist, another example of a lucrative crime on the rise.
This is unreal. You would think most of this are just starving Canadians, but it's actually the gangsters, goons, and goblins that the Liberals have brought in that probably are doing the lion's share of this.
Can you give me an example? Like what kind of these, when you talk about the Russian covert articles is what I'm going to describe them as, but what are they telling people who are reading them?
Well, I mean, one of the examples of the Russian operations is the creation of a fake website, for example, created in May of 2025, albertaseparatist.com, where hundreds of articles were posted that align very much with the separatist movement, are
Yeah, but anyone can do that with AI in like 10 minutes. How many people view the website? That's all that matters. Just listen to this. Then he goes on to point a finger at Tucker Carlson as if some sort of MAGA foreign influencer.
On the U.S. side, with some of these MAGA influencers, you have voices like Tucker Carlson, for example, who is a well-known former advisor to President Trump. In a video that he posted just a couple of weeks ago, he was suggesting that the United States should actually invade Canada to liberate Canadians from the current government. So these are the kinds of voices that we're hearing, the kinds of narratives.
Yeah, do you think Trump's actually going to do that? Trump has already come out and said the 51st state stuff was just talk. He's not going to invade. Even at the beginning, he said he would never invade. He said economic force, not military force. They're obviously just trying to push out a fear campaign on here and not backing things in logic, reality, sources, and facts. This is embarrassing, CBC. Now, while we're talking about CBC, we got Lisa Raitt here dropping some truth bombs about this $15 billion EV project that Honda canceled. The Liberals keep trying to sidestep this and say, well, Honda didn't announce this, so this is not a real report. Honda's just pausing things. Honda's not launching this project. They're not bringing this back up. Now, Honda can say they'll come out with an official statement in a couple of days or whatever, but David Cochrane presses Lisa Raitt on this, and she just gives it to him straight.
Oh, the global shifts and everything, but it's really about Donald Trump, right? I mean, Joe Biden slammed down the gas pedal on the move to EVs with the Inflation Reduction Act, and Trump is hitting the brake, putting it in reverse, and paying people to stop green energy developments, right? It's a total disruption of the transition and the market and the consumer preference, and the tariffs makes it tough to build stuff in Canada now.
So if you go back to Joe Biden, as you just did, I mean, they tried to force a change on the American public and on the Canadian public that didn't take. People were not clamoring to get EVs at all. In fact, they were bringing in more and more policy constraints in order to make people move to that space. And quite frankly, it hasn't worked. And I would add one more to the pile of reasons why this is happening. There was a positive policy choice made by this government to allow 49,000 Chinese EVs to enter into this market. Absolutely, that's going to come into consideration when Honda takes a look at what they're going to be doing in this country, as anybody else would too. So it's not just an isolated Donald Trump global problems issue. It's positive kinds of decisions that this government is taking that also adds into the mix and should be acknowledged as well.
Well, I mean, is that a surmise? Are you surmising that the Chinese quota has something to do with it? Because the Nikkei report doesn't mention that. They talk about instability, low demand. They're going to pivot.
The Nikkei report didn't say that, so that can't be a fact. That can't be anything real, right?
A bit more to like hybrids as opposed to pure EV.
You want my proof point? My proof. Yeah, okay. So my proof point is the actual press release sent out in January of 2026 by the person who represents the foreign car makers here in this country saying the 49,000 is going to be a problem for us. So there's my proof point.
Okay. No, I wasn't questioning I was just looking to know if I'd missed something that came out today.
Look at her face. She's not having this crap from David Cochrane.
I was just...
She's not having it. This guy's like, I wasn't looking for a proof point. Yeah, you were. And she fact-checked you hard. Meanwhile, on CTV, they bring on this guy for the first time, talking about Honda EV plant not opening up.
Has Honda communicated to you, your office, the minister, that this plant is dead?
So Honda has not confirmed this report. The minister and officials were in touch with Honda today. And what's happening is they're communicating to us that they're going to be in touch soon publicly with their medium and long-term plans.
And did that discussion at all involve sort of like any kind of indication one way or the other of why this information was surfacing? Like, did they indicate to you that is under the realm of consideration?
I think they'll have to wait for Honda to share their plans publicly. In the meantime, I can tell you that the plant in Alliston there is very strong. It's at full capacity, over 4,000 employees, and that our auto strategy is anticipated for this kind of eventuality where we know that the global auto shock, the global trading shocks created by the Trump administration's unjustified tariffs are reverberating, and we've got a lot of initiatives underway to help deal with it.
they're not going to open up another plant if they don't have direct access to the American market. And they already said that back a couple months ago on Vashti's show. Now, to wrap up this episode, we got a feel-good story here that has to do with a moose.
When this moose attempted to jump the median along the Trans-Canada Highway in Steadybrook, Newfoundland, it was a long trip down as it flipped over onto its back.
They come up and say, "Oh, you're the moose flipper."
Thankfully, Melvin Rideout was traveling by to Corner Brook for an appointment, and he had the exact skill set needed to spring into action with the help of another driver.
I knew the animal was in trouble when it flipped over. It was on its back. It was kind of on its back, but leaning towards the concrete barrier, so I knew it wasn't able to get up. I just pulled into the lane so that no other vehicles would come down and run into the moose. I'm a dairy farmer, so it's not uncommon to have to roll animals over. So I knew what was needed to be done to flip the animal over onto its feet.
The moose was staggering when it got up, but Rideout says it looked okay as it made its way down into the ditch.
A few people had mentioned that they seen a moose in that town later on that day, so it's a good chance it was probably the same one. It didn't have any life-threatening injuries, I don't think. It's been pretty much all great response. People saying it's nice to see that humanity still around and people caring about animals and stopping and doing the right thing.
This is pretty brave here. I mean, these legs, you get kicked by one of those, it's going to be snapping your bones. It took some courage to do this. We've got some good in the world.